Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Behavior, Evolution, and Culture speaker series. I'm Clark Parrot. I'm organizing the series this year. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to just give you some updates about upcoming talks. We're very, very close to the end of our academic quarter and the academic year. So after Isabelle's talk, we only have 2 more talks this quarter. Wednesday, we have Chris Croupennier, whose talk will be called The Social Minds of Humans and Other Apes. And then the following Monday, the 24th, we have Alyssa Crittenden from UNLV. Her talk will be called Microbiomania, Rewilding, and the Threat of Bioprospecting, How Anthropologists Can Help to Set a More Ethical Research Agenda in Microbiome Sciences. So looking forward to that one. And that actually will be the last talk of the year because the following Monday is a university holiday. So after that, we will be entering our summer break and we'll resume again in the fall, where Brian Wood will be organizing the series. So today, it is my great pleasure to welcome Isabelle Laumer, who is at UCLA in spirit, in Germany, in mind and body right now, and has is very kindly agreed to do her talk, even though it's nighttime there in Germany. Isabelle is here at UCLA doing a postdoc and will be here through the following year, also in Texas doing field work. And Isabelle's talk is called Physical and Social Cognition in a Parrot and Ape Model Species. Welcome, Isabelle, and if others would like to unmute yourselves for a moment, please join me in welcoming Isabelle Laumer.
Hi. Thank you very much. 1 second, I will just share my screen.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you for having me at the back talk. So I will directly start. 1 second, I still need to move you. Okay. So in animal cognition research, there are currently 2 major interrelated streams of research. So one focusing on the evolution of the brain and the other one pinpointing similarities and differences in behavior. And modern approaches of comparative cognition are interested in how cognitive outputs are influenced on the basis of convergence, so distantly related species facing similar demands, and on the basis of divergence, so closely related species facing different cognitive challenges. And so far, most studies in animal cognition were focused on primates, and more recently also on birds. And just to give you some information on recent brain research, Olkowitz and colleagues investigated the cellular composition of the brains of 28 avian species, and they found that the brains, that parrots and corvids have the same or greater forebrain neuron counts as monkeys with much larger brains. And avian brains thus have the potential to provide much higher cognitive power per unit mass than do the mammalian brains. And my talk is not focused on brains, but on the behavior of a parrot and an ape model species. And in the following hour, I will walk you through the studies I conducted during my master, delay of gratification, and during my PhD, flexible decision-making, tool manufacture, tool innovation, template matching from memory, inequity aversion, prosociality, and I will also give you a quick outlook on my current research here at UCLA. And this is the Goffin lab in Austria, the home of now 17 Goffin cockatoos. And here I conducted most of my studies in cooperation with Alice Auersberg and Thomas Buchner. And the lab also studies them in the field at the Goffin lab in Tanimbar, Indonesia. And the birds are endemic to a small island group, as you can see here. And these are the local collaborators. And Mark and Berenica in the upper left corner, they are looking specifically into their foraging behavior and have additionally been studying a wild-caught group. And work on the ecology of the species indicates that they are very social, with juveniles and sub-adults dwelling in groups in various agricultural parts of the island, and territorial family groups breeding in the forest. And like the leopards, they are highly playful and they often involve objects into their solitary or social play. And we can also confirm that they are not nest builders and they breed in existing tree holes, which are sometimes very high up in the tree to protect from snakes. And they seem to be foraging generalists, feeding on a large number of seasonal plants and most likely insects. Importantly, they also include various resources that require extractive foraging techniques, such as hard-shelled fruits and seeds, and they even dig up roots, as you can see in this video, and they taste a lot like potatoes, I was told. And there is a single reported evidence of tool use behavior in the wild so far. So we were recently provided with footage from a wildlife photographer who was taking pictures on a successfully breeding introduced feral population in Singapore. And this individual seems to be probing with a stiff flower stalk in the inside of an open young coconut. And this indicates that although tool use does not seem to exist on a population-wide level in this species, some individuals may already be using tools. And that's Figaro. So our lab's research into goffin cockatoo's tool behavior started after Figaro spontaneously and also reliably manufactured tools by cutting off splinters out of large wood and using them to rake in food that was placed behind this aviary grid. And in a set of 10 observations, Figaro showed 9 instances of tool making, one involving even a different substrate. So he was snipping off a branch from a leafless twig. And as he took approximately 4 times as long to make his first tool as for any subsequent tool, it's likely that we recorded his original innovation event. And they further possess several cognitive building stones required for intelligent extraction, including full object permanence, multi-step problem solving, and also impulse control. And they can also innovate sophisticated forms of tool use and manufacture, but more to that later. So let's dive in. So inhibitory control is the ability to inhibit a strong, prepotent response that is likely to be tempting to execute, like eating a marshmallow, but counterproductive to achieving a future goal, like receiving a second marshmallow. And self-control is also important for non-human animals in a variety of social and foraging contexts. For example, it's seen as an important cognitive prerequisite of cooperation when individuals help a conspecific now in order to receive a favor in the future, or in the presence, for example, of a more stronger or a more dominant individual. An animal may inhibit the behavior by avoiding an immediate direct approach to food or to a potential mate. And interestingly, in chimpanzees, general intelligence is also linked with self-control. And evidence for flexible impulse control over food consumption is rare in non-human animals. So most animal species, like several rodents and also birds, can only wait for a few seconds. And at the time as I conducted my studies, only primates and corvids have been shown to be able to be fully inhibit the consumption of a desirable food in anticipation for a gain in quality or quantity for longer than a minute. And we tested for the first time a parrot species, the goffin's cockatoo, in an exchange task. And here you can see a 40-second delay. Pecan nut, a likable food for cashew. And he can start eating in the, at any time. And before that, he was tested in 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and 20 seconds. And what you can see here is that in contrast to corvids, the cockatoos kept the food like almost the entire time in their beak, close to their taste organs, and rarely put it on the table. And similar to apes and corvids, the goffins tended to either renounce waiting early in a trial or waited the entire delay, so indicating an ability to assess the duration of the delay. So now is the exchange and gets the cashew. So here you can see the mean percentage of successful exchanges for higher quality. And the black bars represent third preferred for most preferred food, the light gray, third preferred for second preferred, and the two controls, most preferred for second preferred and most preferred for third preferred. And as you can see, the cockatoos were able to bridge delays up to 80 seconds for a preferred food quality and up to 20 seconds for a higher quantity. And they tended to trade the initial item more often for the most preferred food than for a less desirable one, and hardly ever exchanged in controls, in which the initial value was higher than they expected. And our results provide first evidence for temporal discounting in birds that do not cache food. So like corvids and also some primates, they were flexibly trading off between immediate and future benefits relative not only to the length of the delay, but also to the difference in trade value. And food caching is not a prerequisite for birds to evolve mechanisms for coping with delayed gratification. And recently, our data was integrated into a bigger data set. So here you can see the maximum tolerated delay when rewards differ either in quality in black or in quantity in white. And on the very left, the crows and ravens, they discarded the initial food in all delays over 20 seconds. So food hoarders may have an advantage over non-hoarders because they can let go of the initial item and don't have to hold them close to their taste organs. And when you look now at the African grey, it's actually only one African grey parrot. And this one was verbally instructed to wait. So he was trained in a wait command. And there's another study by Vic in 2010, and they tested African greys, but they could only wait a few seconds. And unfortunately, the primate species were only mostly tested in the quantitative delay of gratification. I know of another study in capuchins in which the capuchins also waited a bit longer for quality than quantity. And as you can see in the birds, there's also this pattern. But yeah, maybe that's something for the discussion that we can discuss later, why that might be the case. And yeah, so these findings suggest that an extended temporal horizon for decisions concerning food may have evolved convergently within birds, so corvids and parrots, and between birds and primates. And there some possible drivers were suggested, like the variable food resources that are difficult to retrieve, caching behavior in corvids, tool use, and also fission-fusion dynamics. So now I will present two studies that were published separately for each species, in which I investigated flexible decision-making in a multi-dimensional tool use task. And for this study, I worked with the goffin cockatoos, and I also got invited by Joseph Call to work with the orangutans at the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany. And orangutans are ideal candidates because they are habitual tool users and they also show high levels of impulse control. And despite the obvious differences between the two species, there are also similarities. So both are Indonesian species. So the orangutans live in Sumatra and Borneo. The goffin cockatoos are endemic to the Tanimbar Islands. They are both living in evergreen tropical forests. They are mainly arboreal species. Both are opportunistic feeding generalists, and a large proportion of their diet consists of fruits, which are often distributed in patches and only available during a short period of time. And therefore, it's highly likely that they evolved similar cognitive traits as a result of having to adapt to similar environments and also ecological niches. And when making a decision in a natural situation in order to maximize profit, an animal may, for example, need to take into account the difference in quality and quantity, predictability, the reachability, the work effort, the presence or functionality of available means, the individual motivation, and so on. So, despite the substantial numbers of studies on animal decision-making, there are only a few primate studies that included tool use in their task design. So capuchin monkeys are able to delay eating a rod-shaped piece of celery in order to use it as a tool to obtain peanut butter out of the tube. But when the apparatus is not baited, the capuchins immediately ate this rod-shaped piece of celery. And also chimpanzees choose a straw tool over an immediate preferred food in order to use it after a delay to suck juice from a box. And at the time as I conducted my studies, such task designs have not yet been tried outside primates, and it was therefore unclear whether similar cognitive abilities could evolve in distantly related species. So by using a new experimental approach, we aim to dissociate the following aspects of decision-making, including tool selection, flexible value attribution to food and tools, the work effort, individual motivation, and the ability to focus on relevant task affordances. So we did use two food qualities, so pecan nut and cashew for the cockatoos, and apple and banana pellets for the orangutans. And we did use two different apparatuses, so the stick apparatus, which can only be operated by a stick, the ball apparatus, which can only be operated by a ball. And yeah, prior to testing, all animals received a food preference test, were trained to operate the stick and ball apparatus, and were given the experience that only one tool is functional for the respective apparatus. And in the pre-test, the tool selection test, either the ball or stick apparatus was placed on the experimental table. The apparatus was baited with the most preferred food, and the correct option here would be to choose the ball, and here to choose the stick tool. And they always received 12 trials of each condition, semi-randomized across sessions. And here are the results. So the goffins performed above chance, and the orangutans 3 out of 6 performed above chance, and the other 3 needed up to 7 sessions in order to reach the criterion of being correct in 80% of trials. So this was just done in the pre-test, not in other tests. This is the stick apparatus. So, and that's the ball apparatus. So they always indicated their choice by pointing. You probably have seen also that I'm wearing sunglasses. That's in order to avoid giving them any cues. And in the quality allocation test, the animal's most preferred food was either located inside or outside. And the available tool was always functional. So here it would make sense to choose the tool. And here it would make sense to choose the immediate food. And the goffins maximized their profit in most conditions and showed a significant trend for the stick apparatus when the most preferred food was outside. And 5 out of the 6 orangutans also maximized their profit above chance expectation in all conditions. I have another video. So here the most preferred food is inside. So here it's outside, and the individual is also already pointing. Okay, and in the motivation test, so the most preferred food was inside and outside, and in order to avoid work effort, the animals should choose the immediate food. And here are the results. So the goffins avoided the work effort, and 4 out of the 6 orangutans also chose the immediate food over the tool above chance. Oh, sorry. Try to play it again. So in the tool functionality test, the animal's most preferred food was always located inside. So in 50% of trials, the available tool was functional. So here it makes sense to choose the tool. And in the other 50%, it was non-functional. So here it makes sense to choose the immediate lower preferred food. Here are the results. So the goffins maximized their profit in all conditions. And 5 out of 6 orangutans chose the functional tool over the third preferred food above chance. And Raya, that's one female, she chose the correct option in both conditions of the stick apparatus condition above chance expectation. And later, stats revealed that there was a learning effect, so they were better towards the end of the study. Yeah, so here the tool is non-functional. Here it makes sense to choose the third preferred food. And here the tool is again non-functional, and this is what happened usually. So they were probing, sometimes even trying to crack open the apparatus. Yeah, and in the tool selection test, both apparatuses were placed on the experimental table, each containing food of different quality. And the profitable option in condition A would be to choose the ball, and in condition B to choose the stick. And here the goffins performed at chance level, and the orangutans were able to maximize their profit. So here the most preferred food is in the stick apparatus, so it would make sense to choose the stick. But she will choose the wrong tool. Goes to the correct apparatus, sees the cashew in the other one, goes back and operates the apparatus. And here the banana pellet is in the stick apparatus, so here it makes sense to choose the stick. And they also had more time to decide as in the other tests. So both species did overcome immediate drives in order to achieve a gain. So even if this implied tool use as a work effort, they flexibly maximized their profit by considering the difference in food quality. Tool functionality, here only one orangutan did so. And when all task components were present, so the 2 apparatuses, the 2 food qualities, and the 2 tools, the goffin's ability to focus on the relevant information hits its limit. It could be due to perceptual, attentional, or working memory constraints, or even a combination of several of these factors. And overall, tool-related decision-making relative to a gain in quality can arise from general modes of cognitive processing. So in this case, probably high behavioral flexibility, sensory motor control, and also impulse control. And Miller and colleagues recently used my test paradigm to investigate decision-making in habitual tool-using New Caledonian crows, 3 to 5-year-old children, and also adults. And they found that adult humans, but not New Caledonian crows, and children were able to refrain from selecting non-functional tools. And crows and cockatoos show self-control and can also perform similarly to adult humans and older children, but struggle when they have to attend to multiple cues, thereby increasing task complexity. And children and some orangutans may have a bias to use tools than other tool-making species may not have. And that's Figaro's first trial of the tool functionality test. And here is the wrong tool. And he makes the wrong choice. Now has to wait for 30 seconds. And I want you to observe what he's doing. So now it starts. And it was even long enough. And this was the first time he ever made a tool out of a chair. And in all following trials, we actually had to take away the chair. Yeah. So inspired by Figaro's spontaneous tool manufacture, we also designed another experiment. So overall, innovative tool manufacture is rare in animals and also hard to isolate. So I already mentioned our lab's first tool use observation, which was most likely tool innovation. And in a follow-up study, 3 out of 6 birds were able to emulate Figaro's tool use after receiving tool use but not manufacture demonstrations. And 2 cockatoos even succeeded in making their own tools out of the same material. And one did so spontaneously and the other one after tool making demonstrations. And the substrate used in these experiments was larch wood, and this breaks easily along the edge lines of the tree, and therefore it was unclear whether this elongated shape of the tool was actually made accidental. And yeah, studying animal tool use has the potential also to reveal cognitive capabilities. For instance, the degree of flexibility shown by members of a species in making differently shaped tools, engaging in different manufacturing techniques and also using different materials gives a measure of the relative contribution of heritable competence, individually or socially acquired skills, and also the occurrence of individual creativity. And here we focus on the manufacture of stick-type tools across a variety of materials. And to investigate if the birds could actively produce an elongated shape, we confronted the 4 tool-making birds with material that required direct shaping or that needed completely different manipulation patterns. So we had wax, cardboard, and also a twig. And as you can see here in this video, so the goffins can flexibly and spontaneously, that you will see later, transfer the manufacture of stick-type tools across 3 different materials. One bird was immediately consistently successful with all 3 materials. The beeswax was too sticky, so they were not able to make any tools from that. And each material required different manipulation patterns, including substrates that required active sculpting for achieving a functional elongated shape, the cardboard especially. And so overall, the results show that they can make functional tools with similar shape from different materials. And a follow-up study from my lab even confirmed that they are even able to adjust the length of a tool. Yeah, as you just saw, so individual goffins can innovate tools, but can they also innovate a novel tool out of a novel material for an unknown apparatus? So in 2002, the New Caledonian crow Betty spontaneously bent a straight piece of wire into a hook to lift a basket out of this vertical tube after her mate had flown off with the appropriate tool. And this behavior was long considered to be a prime example for innovative tool modification. And at that time, it was already known that wild New Caledonian crows manufacture hook tools from secondary stems. But the technique Betty showed was interpreted to be completely different. And follow-up studies even suggested context-dependent flexibility because she was bending and unbending novel materials using different techniques. And recently it was suggested that Betty's solution was innovative, but strongly influenced by predisposition from habitual tool use and nest building. And Rutz and colleagues, they investigated hook bending behavior in the wild-caught New Caledonian crows. And most of their animals bent the end of their tools, supposedly to add more curvature to the tool shaft, using techniques closely resembling those that Betty used. And Rooks solved the hook bending problem after previous experience with ready-made hooks. And rooks are not specialized tool users, so their behavior cannot be evoked from inherited routines from habitual tool manufacture. Nevertheless, it was suggested that their success could be influenced by behavioral predispositions from during nest construction, such as like yanking and twisting actions required during nest construction. And here's a rook nest. So they consist of thin, freshly broken twigs, which appear also to be more strongly bent at the center of the nest. And therefore, we decided to test a bird that was not a specialized tool user, had no pre-experience with hook tools, and is not a nest builder. So like all Cacatuidae, they use pre-existing cavities for nesting, and they also do not modify these cavities. And we hope to answer following questions. So can hook bending arise in a bird species that lacks ecological predisposition for bending material? And what effect has individual pre-experience with hook tools? And half of the animals started with the bending task, the other half with the unbending task. And we had two materials, so a string and a pipe cleaner, and they were offered on both sides of the setup. And for all tasks, the position of the food reward, as well as the position of the wire and the string, were semi-randomly balanced across sessions. And prior to the experiments, we divided the birds into two groups. And first, all animals received one session of the bending and the unbending task. And then one group received stepwise scaffolding of experience. So first they received pre-experience A with pre-made hooks. And if they failed that, they also received pre-experience B with pre-inserted tools. And the other group served as control and received a similar amount of sessions, but no scaffolding steps. And in the course of the experiment, a total of 3 birds were able to manufacture hook tools. So Figaro succeeded in 6 occasions, and 1 female with pre-experience, Finny, and 1 without, Moneypenny. They became consistently successful, and that also went, what you can see here in the picture, the hooks improved over time, so later tools were only bent at the very far distal end. And in the unbending task, a total of 4 birds succeeded, and Doolittle and Finney became consistently successful after receiving pre-experience A, so with the straight wire. And I have a video. So now the bending has already happened. It was very fast. So keeping everything else straight and then pulling up until the basket is up and and rarely they were also unbending with the foot, with the beak. So getting back to our questions, so task-naive goffin cockatoos can innovate the crafting of a functional hook from a novel material, and it's within the species' capacity to make different tool types from the same material. And pre-experience seemed to help some individuals, but seems not to be necessary to succeed in the task. Yeah, so what about primate studies? So children fail up to the age of 5, and only at the age of 8, the majority of them bent a hook. And all tested age classes succeeded when given demonstrations. And when given a choice between a straight and a hooked wire, even the 4-year-old chose the correct tool. And the authors of these studies suggested that the hook bending task might represent an ill-structured problem, because animals only have, or children only have information about the start and the goal state, but not on how to get from one state to the other. And at that time, no studies on hook bending in other primates were done. So I tested 5 orangutans. And what you can see here, 2 individuals, Padana and Pini, they became consistently successful from the very first trial and session on in the hook bending and unbending task. And in the unbending task, all animals became consistently successful. And I have a video. So the bending here already happens with the teeth. So she's bending it in her mouth. They also showed variations in bending behavior, sometimes bending them with their hands. And they immediately started modifying and inserting the wire, spent also more time probing with the modified functional tool than with the unmodified one, never inserted distractor materials, and also never any material in the control tube. And also the unbending, they also showed variations in their unbending behavior. And similar to the goffins, the tool designs also improved over time. And yeah, so non-customary tool-using birds can innovate a hook tool, and habitual tool-using apes can spontaneously innovate a hook tool. And yeah, the ability to solve this problem may arise from general modes of cognitive processing, so probably high behavioral flexibility, fast individual learning, high levels of impulse control, high levels of sensory motor control, and also a tendency for object manipulation and combination. So for the next study, first of all, I have a question for you. What shapes are a dog's ear? So most people visualize the corresponding image before answering the question. And I assume that by now, many of you have like many different pictures of dogs in their minds now. That's what comes up in my mind. So that's my dog, Vanya. So humans can represent information in multiple ways and use also mental templates to actively produce memorized patterns, for example, when drawing a sketch or when mentally simulating complex processes. But how can we investigate this ability in animals, which cannot share their perception through spoken language? So in non-human animals, the ability to recognize information is typically assessed in delayed matching to sample task using touchscreen designs. And here the focus is usually on how long certain animal species can keep like specific object features in memory. And recall, on the other hand, requires the animal to specifically reproduce remembered information. And this ability is largely uncharted in animals. And there is evidence that rhesus macaques can reproduce 2-dimensional shapes after a delay by aligning 2 or 3 colored boxes on a touchscreen grid. Yeah, and so far it's unknown if other animals outside primates share this ability. And Chalbert and colleagues, they recently tested New Caledonian crows, a tool maker that is dependent on tool-obtained resources, in a physical template matching task. And the crows were presented with card rectangles of 2 different sizes. And they first learned that only one size, so either big or small, was rewarded. And in the following test, the birds were provided with large sheets of cardboard from which the birds could tear section, and meaning manufacturing their own card piece to insert it into a vending machine to receive a reward. And here you can see the scanned images of all pieces ripped by each bird after learning that small or large templates were rewarded. And during the test, the crows manufactured and inserted significantly larger card pieces when they had learned that a large piece was rewarded compared to small templates. And these results suggest that the birds were capable of flexibly recalling and also reproducing at least one object property, so small versus large, of a mental template. And in the wild, New Caledonian crows are known to make at least 3 different types of Padanus tools, which substantially differ in appearance depending on the geographic area the birds inhabit. And this regional variation was argued to represent an example of cumulative cultural transmission. And however, so far the New Caledonian crows show limited reliance on social learning in both captivity and the wild. And Chalbert and colleagues, they argued that by using mental templates, the juvenile birds could form a mental template of their parents' tool design through repeated exposure and use, and then reproduce these signs from memory. And what is not yet clear is whether these abilities seen among New Caledonian crows are unique to the species, and whether a capacity for mental template matching developed as a consequence of New Caledonian crows' cumulative tool culture. And so far, only the New Caledonian crows have been tested in this physical template matching task. Thus, it would be, highly informative to understand whether other avian species that do not have cumulative tool cultures would show similar abilities. And the cockatoos were first trained to insert carved strips of paper into a tube in order to receive a piece of cashew. And across 3 experiments, the goffins were exposed to 2 pre-made template objects varying either in color, in size, or in shape. And only one template was rewarded. And in the test, they were asked to manufacture an object out of cardboard. So first they learned that here in this case, brown is rewarded. And in the test, they could decide out of which they want to manufacture a piece of paper. And the results of this color test showed that all goffin cockatoos selected the correctly colored paper above chance expectation to carve the strip. And for the size test, first the cockatoos were divided into 2 groups, with one group being rewarded for inserting short pre-made strips and the other one large ones. And this is the test. And then this bird was rewarded for long templates. This is the test. Yeah, and interestingly, on an individual level, 3 out of the 6 manufactured shorter pieces when they were previously rewarded for inserting short templates, and longer ones when they had experienced long templates before. And they were also able to switch and carve strips in the other size as well. And the results suggest that goffin cockatoos can recall and manufacture objects based on specific features such as size and color, despite being rewarded at random and also in the absence of the respective template. And then we also tested whether they could match the shape. Yeah, and we found no evidence that the cockatoos could carve the L-shaped pieces after learning that L-shaped templates were rewarded. Though their manufactured strips, they were wider than in the previous size test. And the cockatoos might have faced morphological and ergonomical constraints. So since the distance between the tip of the beak and the edge of the horizontal part of the upper mandible only allows them to carve out objects in a certain width. And in 3 individual instances, 2 animals carved out small stripes and folded them with the resulting product resembling an L shape, so 90-degree angle. I'm zooming in now so that you can see, so here and here. And Conrad also discarded a larger number of manufactured items before inserting the final object into the target tube, so compared to his behavior in the size test. And our results show that the goffins possess the ability to attend to different model features and also can recreate some, but not all, object properties from memory. And the ability to recall and reproduce color and size of a mental template has previously only been shown in the New Caledonian crow, and finding this ability in a parrot that has the capacity for tool innovation, but so far lacks a dependency on tool use and is also not dependent on tool obtained resources, suggests that the latter is not a necessary condition for this ability to evolve. And yeah, the goffin has so far largely been studied for their cognitive abilities in the technical domain, but in the following minutes, I will also present first data on their social cognition. And for this, I collaborated with Jörg Massen. He's a specialist for primate and avian social cognition. And inequity aversion is defined as the ability to detect and react negatively to unequal payoffs. And it's an important component for cooperative interactions in humans. And from an evolutionary perspective, cooperation and inequity aversion seems to be closely linked and also believed to have co-evolved alongside one another. So having a sense of equitable payoffs is beneficial in cooperative interactions. So cheating is easily detected, can be punished, and avoided in future interactions, while stable cooperative partnerships can be formed. And to trace its evolutionary history, there has recently been a surge in comparative studies across different species, and evidence of inequity aversion has so far been identified in several primates, in dogs, and in rats. And within apes, chimpanzees show sensitivity towards unequal reward distribution, while semi-solitary orangutans, that in contrast to the chimpanzees do not show cooperation in the wild, also do not react to inequity. And inequity aversion is also found in Old World monkeys, in New World monkeys, brown capuchins and cotton-top tamarins, but for example, not in squirrel monkeys that also do not cooperate habitually. And research in birds revealed mixed findings so far. So among corvids, crows and ravens did react sensitively to unequal payoffs and a work effort, while the New Caledonian crow did not. And among parrots, kias were studied so far, and yet despite the fact that they live in large hierarchically structured groups that show complex interactions, they did not show a significant reaction to inequitable payoffs. On Tanimbar, we found that the birds are very social, live in small territorial family groups in the forest, as well as in semi-nomadic fission-fusion flocks of up to 100 individuals. And these aggregations may require complex social skills. And within these family groups, they also share intensive relationships with their partner and their former infants. And interestingly, they also have been observed mobbing and chasing away eclectus parrots, as well as predatory birds in small groups in a seemingly cooperative effort, but more studies on that need to be conducted. And we used a standardized token exchange paradigm in which first the partner and then the subjects could exchange a token for a food reward. So the equity condition, that was the baseline condition, the inequity condition, which is a control for sensitivity to unequal reward distribution, the non-social control in which no partner is present. This is a control for the reward movement in the inequity condition, and a free gift condition, which controls for sensitivity to work effort. And we tested all of these conditions without work effort and with work effort. So here the token had to be retrieved from the tube. And I have a video. That's the free gift condition. So here the partner receives the low quality reward without having to do anything. Yeah, and the results show that the birds did not react to unequal reward distribution, but between conditions, the comparisons revealed that specifically the free gift condition resulted in lower likelihood of exchange, and significantly so when compared with the equity and inequity condition. And even though the interaction between treatment and condition was not maintained in the best fitting model, the visual inspection of the data suggests that this effect is mainly driven from the treatment with additional work effort. So when the inequity was increased by adding substantial work effort, the likelihood to exchange was lower in the condition in which the partner received the same reward as a gift, whereas the test bird had to perform a task involving the substantial work effort. And this suggests that the goffin cockatoo do react aversively to work effort inequality. And yeah, similar to primates and corvids, they did show some sensitivity to increased unequal work effort, but did not react to unequal reward distribution. And awareness to others, individuals' efforts and payoff may evolve independently of phylogeny and also independently from each other in systems with a given degree of social complexity and cooperative behaviors in the wild. And yeah, doing something to someone else's benefit at low or no cost to themselves, so in other words, prosociality, has been studied in primates, in other mammals and some birds with rather mixed results so far. And to test basic prosocial behavior in birds, there are currently two approaches. So the prosocial choice task. So here an animal has a selection of choices with only one benefiting the partner. And the other are instrumental token transfer tasks in which a token is out of reach for a partner, yet can be transferred by the test animal without self-benefit. And the results so far are rather mixed. So common ravens failed in a prosocial choice task, while azure-winged magpies seemed to show prosocial behavior. And ravens and kias failed some controls in a token exchange task, while gray parrots failed one version but passed another. And an advanced form of prosocial behavior that is often linked to empathy is flexible targeted helping, so acting specifically upon a partner's need. And this has been tested in chimpanzees in a tool transfer task in which one chimp had access to different tools while the partner had one out of two apparatuses. And the apes transferred the functional tool above chance level more when they could see into their partner's compartment. And that suggests that they were flexibly adjusting their helping behavior based on the needs of a partner. And yeah, the goffins can use different tool types and apparatuses, and so they also represent ideal avian model species for this task. They were sitting in two test compartments separated by a plexiglass wall with two exchange windows. And the test animals had access to 4 tools, so all 4 were previously associated with food from previous experiments, and the partner had either access to the stick or ball apparatus. And we also used a critical control in which the apparatus was present but not the partner. And we also had a playful condition in which a partner but no apparatus was there to see to what degree playful transfers would happen. Yeah, and we expected a lot of playful transfers to happen, as the goffins show also a lot of insertion behavior in their unrewarded playful object play. And indeed, we found that the goffins transferred a lot of objects to the other compartment, sometimes even back and forth. And this supports the assumption that many object transfers were playful. And this play seems not to be particularly socially motivated. We did not find significantly more transfers in the social condition than in the no partner control. Importantly, however, we found that the actors of 3 out of the 8 diets did transfer the correct tool in most of the test trials and significantly more frequently than in the test and in the no partner control. In contrast, the remaining birds, they rarely transferred. And additionally, one of the birds was even more likely to transfer the correct tool first before transferring any other object in the test, depicted on the right, than in the no partner condition, so that's depicted on the left. And the other 2 birds were marginally non-significantly more likely to do so. Yeah, and the position of the tools was always randomized, balanced for condition. Yeah, and they were always closely watching the partner as they were operating the apparatus. Yeah, and here there were still a lot of object interactions, but more playful. Yeah, and here you can see this play behavior, also this back and forth passing of tools. Yeah, so the results suggest that the goffins show targeted helping in a tool transfer task on an individual, but not on a species level. Also, while their actions benefit their partner, I think that it's not quite clear whether the intention is to benefit the partner's well-being or whether they also find some self-satisfaction in seeing the apparatus that they know being collapsed by their partner, which still benefits the partner, but the intention is different. So future studies are needed here. Now I will give you a quick outlook on my current research. So playful joking is an important part of human societies that draws on social intelligence and ability to anticipate the future, and also appreciate the violation of expectation. And from a psychological perspective, playful teasing is particularly interesting because it's highly ambiguous, and thus it likely involves mind reading skills. So how will the other react if I do this, as well as on the side of the target? So what's the other's intention? And recent developmental studies suggest that simple forms of joking, so non-verbal playful teasing, is already visible in human infants in the first year of life. And this suggests that language is not a prerequisite for simple joking, and thus that it might be present also in our closest relatives. And previous research based on literature review in 2020 and also pilot data by my research group found that great apes seem to display similar forms of teasing behavior as human infants. And yeah, due to COVID, we had to reschedule all planned experiments. So hopefully we can test this summer. We have developed a set of experimental research designs to investigate great apes' affective responses and preferences to positive social events using behavioral and non-invasive physiological measures such as thermal imaging, eye tracking, pupillometry. And for one of these studies, we will also cooperate with Chris Krupenia, so who will give a back talk on Wednesday. And now I will give you a very quick look. 1 second. Yeah. Quick idea what we did during the pandemic. So by using a large video corpus of zoo-housed chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, and gorillas, we have created a data set of spontaneous provocative social interactions with the aim to understand how great apes try to provoke social reactions from others. And these interactions, they range from games, teasing, harassment, and also surprising each other. And using ape gesture coding system as a starting point, we have now developed a behavioral coding system aimed at identifying and also quantifying intentionally provocative behavior. And we hope to better understand which animals usually perform provocative behavior, to whom is it directed, in which context does teasing occur, and if ape teasing similar to infant teasing serves to enhance the bond between teaser and target, we would expect to find play markers during these events, so especially on the side of the teaser, and to observe also more positive than negative outcomes, and to find also this behavior most often between closely bonded individuals. And furthermore, we are also currently developing data-driven definitions of playful and non-playful teasing behavior in great apes derived from this video data. And we also designed an online survey for ape keepers to systematically assess and identify different forms of ape teasing behaviors across different groups and all 4 great ape species in North American and European zoos. And this research was approved by ESA and EASA, and it's currently been conducted in German and English-speaking countries. And we are specifically interested in how different ape species try to provoke social reactions from others. And the survey is also able to cover many more groups that I would be able to observe myself. And yeah, the presence of playful teasing and also proto-jokes in all 4 great ape species would suggest that our last common ancestor may have had the cognitive prerequisites to display similar behavioral forms. Yeah, and with that, I'm closing my talk. I want to thank all of the animals that participated in my research, all of the collaborators, the funding organizations, and I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Isabelle, for a wonderful talk. So much to think about there. Amazing studies.
Thank you.
Let me open up the floor for questions. The best thing to do is to use the raise hand option under the participants screen, and I will keep a list and call on people. Does anyone have a first question for Isabelle? I can begin with a question that Molly Fox asked. Unfortunately, she's not here. She had to leave for a doctor's appointment, but she sent me a question in the chat to ask. She says, is there any effect of social hierarchy on animals' ability to delay gratification? Maybe it's strategic not to go for a food source that a higher ranked individual wants so that you can avoid social conflict. That's her question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking right now about what rank the individuals that waited the longest actually had. So Muppet, for example, was one individual. He waited this 80 seconds. He's more of a lower ranking individual. So here actually it would make sense that he's used to delay of gratification when approaching food. And the other one was Moneypenny, that's a female that is also more lower in rank. So here, yeah, probably it would make sense, yeah, in this that they actually are used to. And Figaro, for example, that's the alpha male. So he actually is not very patient. So he just, I think, waited 20 seconds. Yeah, so definitely, so rank could have an influence on this data.
Interesting. I mean, that could even be then, if I'm taking what you're saying in Molly's question the right way, it seems like that could even be like a cross species variable you could look at, right? Would the argument be that, I mean, an argument could be that where you have steep dominance hierarchies, you would expect to see better abilities to delay gratification, I guess.
Yeah, so I think let me just think, I think also in other research papers, so it's not the first time actually that I heard from rank that rank has an influence on delay of gratification. So it was suggested, but you know, the problem is that we always test not so many individuals. So we usually work with just a few. I mean, you can't keep like 100 Goffin cockatoos, and that's impossible. So and therefore, yeah, so that's actually something that people are definitely interested in, that do these delay of gratification tests. And I mean, for example, in the Goffins, they have a linear dominance hierarchy. So with the males more higher ranking than the females. And there, maybe it would even also make sense also for females. But again, we had one male and one female that waited equally long. So yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Let's take a question from Dan and then Sasha.
Sasha, go ahead. I'll wait.
Sasha.
Okay. Thanks for a great talk, Isabelle. So interesting to hear about all the Goffin's cockatoo research. It's really impressive. I was just wondering, I had a short question about it seemed like in one of the findings was that children performed worse in a way than some of the cockatoos on the wire bending, if I'm saying that correctly. So I was just wondering, do you think that's because the children need like teaching from adults, or well, what do you think was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, children rely strongly also on social learning and also imitating. So the authors of these studies, because they conducted a lot of different studies, and actually they would have even continued conducting studies if not COVID had hit. So because I know Sarah Beck actually that is also involved in these studies, and she had to delay all of her studies, as probably all of researchers that are working with animals or children right now have. So their guess is actually that because multitasking and also this ill-structured problem solving, that these are abilities that are actually the prefrontal medial cortex. This is the area where multitasking and also this ill-structured problem solving happens. And this area in the brain matures later in the cognitive development at around 8-9 years of age. So maybe that is the reason why children before the age of 8 have so many problems in solving this task without given any help. So, but when they are given help, I mean, they can, so demonstrations, then they can solve the task. But when they are not giving any help, there are no demonstrations. And interestingly, it's also not a problem of functional fixedness. So because even when they are told, okay, do something with the wire, then they are also not able to solve the task. That's something that's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. Thanks.
Hope that answers your question.
Humans are strange. Next, Dan, you ask a question.
Yeah, thanks, Isabelle. Really interesting and very impressive sort of portfolio of different projects all complementing each other. You know, to kind of partition that portfolio roughly, you have two parts to it. One is the mechanical manipulation of the world, so tool use, problem solving kinds of things, and the other is the social interaction. You're treating those as entirely kind of separate from each other. And in some of your experimental designs, at least those, you know, that what I could gather from the videos, I haven't read the papers, I confess. The human experimenter's role is simply presenting the mechanical problem. So when you give the goffin the puzzle box, you're not doing anything other than presenting the problem, and they have to solve the problem. But in some of the others, there's actual social exchange going on. So for example, the shape and color tests with the goffins, there is no mechanical function of producing a piece of colored paper, right? It's just a token that is exchanged with the experimenter. And given how social these animals are, I don't know anything about them beyond what you've told me today, but it wouldn't surprise me if, for example, they're a popular pet because they seem intelligent, curious, and social, right? Obviously, these are experimental animals, not pets, but just the fact that they can be made into pets, if that is the case, suggests that they're capable of incorporating humans into their social world, right? So my question then is, in those tests that you're presenting as mechanical, like the color and shape and size manipulations, are the goffins conceptualizing it as mechanical, or are they conceptualizing it as social? That is, are they engaging in an exchange interaction with a social partner rather than manipulating some feature of the world as part of their extractive foraging strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the goffins are in general, as you could probably have seen also from the videos, they are very focused on the tasks, actually. They are also very persistent in, for example, when you give them a new problem, they are really persistent in trying to solve it. And for example, the cashew nuts that you saw, they only get them in the test conditions. So they never receive cashews in the aviary, so they only get them in the test, and they really they like them a lot, and they do a lot for getting one little piece. It's actually 1/8 of a cashew nut, so a very little piece in order to get this reward. And I mean, once they are on this chair and on this test table, their focus is, I think, a lot on the task. I mean, we are not interacting with the animals in any way. So you also saw that we have these sunglasses, so to avoid giving them any cueing. We also are not speaking with them. It's just maybe in the beginning when starting, okay, let's go. That's the only part actually when I was speaking to the animal. And you also, while testing, you also never interact with the animal. You never preen it, for example. That these are all things that are not happening in the test during the test. And yeah, I mean, they are hand-raised birds, so they have they enjoy being around humans. So that's definitely something. But I think that during the test, they are very much focused on the task. That's at least the impression that I have. I don't know if that answers your question.
It sort of does, but one could, just to play devil's advocate, when I give my dogs treats, they're very focused on the treat and, making sure that they're doing what gets them the treat. but that doesn't mean it's not a social exchange. And, you know, if I went to the closet and got the bag of treats, put on a pair of sunglasses, right, and, you know, presented them with a context where they knew what they were supposed to do and did nothing else, they would, you know, aggressively perform the desired behavior with their attention laser focused on the treat. But I don't think there's any question that from their perspective, it's a social interaction, right? So, I mean, I guess what I would find more persuasive, what you've done is acceptable, but what I would find more persuasive is if there is no person in that interaction at all, right? Because there doesn't have to be for, you know, you can have a hidden trapdoor or whatever, where they, when they put the right color into the little box, you know, then the desired treat appears and there is no person, you know, present in the room. And if there's no difference between that condition and the one where the person is present, then I say, okay, they have two kinds of problem solving cognition, right? There's mechanical cognition that comes straight out of their extractive foraging repertoire. And then there's social cognition that comes out of their highly social, you know, flock structure, right? And those are compartmentalized. But as it is, they're kind of intermingled, right?
Yeah, I mean, for example, the New Caledonian crows here, because they are very neophobic, so you could actually never interact or test them in this way, so that you have them like sitting with them on the same table, for example, because they are very neophobic, and therefore the experimenters also used this vending machine that actually, when they placed something in there, that they randomly received a reward from that vending machine. But I still think that I mean, for example, we also did touch screen tasks with the Goffin cockatoos. And there they also perform like, they really like to eat the nuts, and they are very motivated to perform actually on the touch screen. It's almost like playing computer games. So they actually were also, very motivated and participated a lot in these tests too.
Okay, interesting, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, okay, Erica.
Awesome, thanks. Beautiful, beautiful talk, Isabelle. I wanted to ask a couple of questions, but I think this first one, I hope ties into what Dan was asking, which is, I was struck by the fact that, you know, across several of the experiments, there were 2 or 3 birds that seemed to get it, right? And then the rest of them that didn't. And given that you're testing the same birds, I was just wondering whether those were the same birds across studies, and basically does success on what you're calling physical cognition and social cognition track together, or do they pull apart? Because I think you could make an argument that if there are some birds that, you know, are successful at all of the physical cognition tasks, but not the same birds that are successful at the social cognition tasks, then I think that would strengthen the argument that you're really testing 2 different things as opposed to some kind of, you know, G intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, when I think now about all of my experiments that I conducted, so for example, the 2 animals that were able to delay gratification, so Muppet and Moneypenny, I mean, Muppet actually is not a bird that is that was particularly, let's say, good in other experiments. Moneypenny is the one that actually manufactured a hook tool without any given pre-experience. So she was particularly good also in this innovation task. I mean, we have Figaro that is very skilled in actually making tools. As you probably have seen also in the videos, he's the only one that actually puts the tool into the mouth, not the mouth, the beak like that. So he actually uses his tongue almost like a thumb, like in a thumb-like fashion against the upper mandible, so that he actually can really insert things. And he's the only one that actually inserts things like that. The others are actually placing things at the hole and then going down with the beak and then pushing until, for example, the tool is inserted. in the social tasks, for example, Mayday was the one that did transfer the correct tool first in this condition. But she, when I think about the other tasks that she performed, she was neither particularly good at inhibiting in the delay of gratification task. I mean, here we would need really a bigger sample size in order to say something about that. I think.
But it's not always when
it's not always the same bird. No.
Always, you have like 2 or 3 genius birds, and
no.
Right. Interesting. Can I ask a quick second question while I have wrenched control of the floor? So I was just wondering, thinking about the template study, sort of juxtaposed with the hook bending study. I thought it was really interesting. I love that you were testing the different shaped templates, the L as well as the different size. And I was wondering if I guess I was surprised that they couldn't do it, right? Because they can bend hooks. So obviously there's something where they understand about straight versus not straight. So I was wondering if you had tested or had any plans to test, or anyone who's now in the lab has plans to test, template matching with pieces of wire. You know, can they bend wire into an L as a template? If their problem with making L shapes out of paper is perhaps mechanical.
Yeah, actually, I had the same idea, and I already did that immediately after. So as I saw that they couldn't make L shapes, I tried to train them with L-shaped pieces of wire and straight pieces of wire. And the problem was here at this point because some individuals lost motivation, and training them to insert this L shape, it took a while, and actually only one bird was after several sessions able to insert the L shape piece of wire. And but he did never actually bend material in this test. But I mean, in the hook bending task, only 3 individuals were successful in this unbending and in the hook bending version. And so many individuals didn't even manipulate this material that much. And so it would be very interesting actually to maybe set that test again up and training the birds again on different wires, whether they can insert different shaped wires, and see whether they would make even some shapes out of it. But yeah, at least with this one individual that in which I tried it out, so he did not bend these L shapes, unfortunately.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. If others would like to jump in the queue, please do raise your hand. In the meantime, I wanted to ask you, Isabelle, if you could say a little bit more about what you think the ecological variables that are driving the evolution of these abilities might be, because it seems like, you know, for at least for the delayed gratification, right, there you didn't have evidence that it was like food caching that was the relevant variable. And I mean, do you have any intuitions about that? And maybe things we haven't measured, or maybe it's not even the right way of thinking about it, to think about it in terms of ecology or social ecology? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, there are different hypotheses. For example, the extractive foraging hypothesis. So, I mean, they rely on like seasonally unpredictable food resources that are embedded, and probably also for foraging on these embedded food sources. Yeah, they need to be persistent in opening them up. And yeah, so I mean, there's this, so the extractive foraging hypothesis, and there's also like the social intelligence hypothesis. So like flexible cognitive abilities evolved as a response to the challenges of living in complex social environments. And especially when you have a look at these large fission fusion groups that we find on Tanimbar, so mostly juveniles and also sub-adults that are actually in these big groups. So here the animals, have to remember different individuals, have to infer like rank even when the individuals are gone and then they come back. So they have to remember their relationships that they have. And I think that's also something that drives also the evolution of intelligence, so living in large groups. And I mean, then there's also the cognitive buffer hypothesis. So the ability to innovate new behavioral solutions plays also a role in the evolution of large brains, because it increases the survival probability and also leads like to a natural selection of large brains. Yeah, so all of these factors, and I mean, also they are living on an island. They have this ecological niche, and yeah, also the environment generally on islands is also unpredictable. So there are several things in their ecology that might drive the evolution of their large brains. And
I mean, sometimes I wonder if, I mean, maybe this is a crazy question, but whether in some of these cases we may have the causation backwards, like the arrow of causation, right? Because with something like extractive foraging, it seems like, there's a lot of environments where there's extractively forageable foods available, but only some species end up actually using those, right? And I wonder if the arrow of causation is actually something more like some species, for whatever reason, end up, rather than thinking of it as driven by need, that you need to do this because it's in the environment, it's more like some species hit upon the ability to do it, and then they become dependent on those kinds of resources. And then when we look at the ecological correlations, we see that there are the species that are able to do it are the ones that do it, but it wouldn't really be right to think of it as driven by the need to do it, right? As opposed to somehow evolution hits upon the ability to make use of these resources. And then, I mean, because we think about that with humans a lot with things like fire, right? Any organism could make fire, in theory, right? But humans somehow became able to, and then that unlocked all these other things and kind of created this path-dependent evolution. And I wonder if for some of these really smart birds, for example, if that wouldn't be another way of thinking about it. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Something else that I was also thinking a lot about was actually also this like 3D environment that like birds also live in, but also the orangutans actually. Because, I mean, especially for orangutans, because they are really heavy, so males can get up to 90 kilograms. And I mean, when they are traveling in this three-dimensional space of a rainforest, I mean, they are so heavy, so the structures are actually also bending under their weight. Sometimes like twigs or also branches can break because of this heavy weight. So here they constantly have to adjust this like big body that they have and be careful not to fall down. Actually, orangutans, their studies, that show that they have a lot of bone fractures because sometimes they fall because branches break. And especially in orangutans, there's also a lot of like innovation in, for example, making their sleeping nests. So here they also, for example, not only integrate just trees like branches or from one tree, they also sometimes use like two different trees. So they break branches together and fuse them in a way. And so there's a lot of things that also make them, they have to adapt to this 3D environment and also to make like constant, also sometimes very fast decisions
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it seems like intuitively there's some sort of correlation between bodily dexterity and at least what we think of as intelligence, right? Like a lot of the really smart, I mean, you look at those videos and the parrots just have an incredible amount of physical dexterity. And I think that Peter Godfrey Smith might have made this argument with octopuses as well, that like a large amount of the intelligence is like controlling the body in ways that you know, allow you to do things in the environment, like you're saying, in a 3D environment, you know, that other organisms can't, which is a really cool idea to think about. So we're up against the end of the hour. I wonder if others have any one final question, or shall we wrap it up? It sounds like we are. Joe, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, good. So it looks like we're at the end of our time. This has been really, really, really great. And it's so great to hear about this research, and also about the fantastic research that you and Erica will be doing in the coming year. So we're also really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Thank you so much again for zooming in from Germany. We really appreciate the nighttime talk, and thank you. If others would like to join me, let's please thank Isabelle for a wonderful talk today.
Thank you very much.
Great. Take care, and we're looking forward to seeing you next year. Bye, everybody. I'll see you on Wednesday for Chris Croupennier.
Thank you.